Your athlete's dealing with shin splints, or a stress reaction, or chronic Achilles pain. They need to back off running volume, but you know if they sit on the couch for 3 weeks, they're going to lose a lot of their aerobic fitness. So what do? Cross training. But not random cross training. Strategic, programmed cross training that maintains aerobic development while allowing the body to heal. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how I use cross training to keep athletes fit when they can't run, and how even healthy athletes benefit from adding cross training into their program. I'm Kevin Kuhn. I've been studying exercise physiology for 20 years and coaching distance runners for over a decade. In the previous videos, we've covered some of the major pillars of my complete aerobic first training system. Training the right energy systems, the 8 training gears, structuring your week, making easy days actually easy, individualizing intelligently, and progressing volume patiently. But here's another thing that I see all the time. Athletes who need to reduce running volume due to injury or overuse, and coaches who don't know how to maintain fitness without running. Or athletes who could benefit from additional aerobic stimulus but can't handle more running volume yet. Cross-training solves both of those problems if you do it right. Cross-training serves 2 critical purposes in my program. Purpose number 1, injury prevention and management. Running is high impact. Every foot strike creates force that travels through your feet, ankles, shins, knees, and hips, even your spine. That impact is part of what makes running effective. It builds bone density and muscular strength, but it's also what causes overuse injuries when volume increases too quickly or when athletes don't have adequate recovery. Cross-training allows you to accumulate aerobic volume without the repetitive impact of running. An athlete dealing with shin splints can bike or use the elliptical and maintain their cardiovascular fitness while their shins heal. Purpose number 2, additional aerobic stimulus for athletes who can't handle more running volume yet. Remember from episode 6, we're trying to find that sustainable running volume and stay there. But what if an athlete's sustainable running volume is only 30 miles per week, and you know they could benefit from more aerobic stimulus? You don't push their running volume higher and risk injury. You add in cross-training time. A freshman running 30 miles per week might add 2 to 3 training sessions of 30 minutes each of cross-training. That's 60 to 90 additional minutes of aerobic work per week without adding any more impact stress. Over a year, that's an extra 50 to 75 hours of aerobic stimulus, and that adds up. So what type of athletes cross-train in my program? Well, almost all my athletes do some form of cross-training, but the amount and the intensity varies depending on their training age and their current running volume. My younger athletes, or lower training age athletes, typically do easy cross-training only, typically 2 to 3 days per week, about 30 minutes per session. Why easy? Because they're still building their running base and their aerobic base. I'm not trying to add hard work, I'm just adding more easy aerobic volume that their legs can't handle yet from running alone. They can do more volume, but they can't do more running volume. A middle schooler running 25 miles per week might add 90 minutes of easy cycling. That's additional aerobic development without the impact stress of running an extra 6 to 8 miles per week. Older athletes, or athletes with a higher training age who are running higher volume, might supplement 1 to 2 cross-training sessions per week, also typically easy. It's supplemental recovery work. It's active recovery that keeps blood flowing, maintains the aerobic stimulus without adding more impact. Oftentimes, they'll feel better the next day after a hard workout followed by an easy cross-training session than they would feel if they did just the hard session alone. And some athletes who are lower on running volume by choice or necessity may do a lot more cross-training volume. These athletes do more cross-training sessions, and some of those sessions are actually at a higher intensity. If an athlete is dealing with an injury and can only run 20 miles per week, or they have an injury that's preventing them from running at all, they might do 4, 5, 6, or even 7 cross-training sessions in a week. The majority of those are going to be easy. Some of those are going to be around tempo effort or around threshold intensity. The goal is to maintain as much aerobic fitness as possible while that injury heals. So what are my primary tools that I use for cross-training? The majority of the cross-training programming that I do utilizes something called Zwift. Let me explain what it is and why I use it. Zwift is an indoor cycling platform, basically a video game for cycling. You connect a bike trainer to your computer or tablet, and you ride in a virtual world. But here's why it's valuable for me as a coach. I can program specific workouts based on FTP. FTP stands for functional threshold power. It's similar to threshold pace in running. It's the power output you can sustain for roughly an hour. Once I know an athlete's FTP, I can program workouts at specific percentages of that number. In general, 60 to 70% of FTP is going to be similar to easy running. It's going to be easy aerobic work. 75 to 85% of FTP is going to be similar to marathon to half marathon pace or tempo effort. 85 to 95% of FTP is going to be somewhere around your threshold running intensity or threshold effort. 95% to 105% of FTP is where we get more into that VO2 max range, which is going to feel a little bit more like 2 mile to 5K effort if you were running. So having these percentages of FTP allows me to prescribe cross-training workouts with the same precision I use for running workouts. Here's an example of what a Zwift workout might look like. 10-minute warm-up at 60% of FTP, and then 3 times 10 minutes at 85% of FTP, which is going to be right around their threshold, with 2 minutes easy between sets, and then another 10-minute cool down. That's going to be over 50 minutes of total work. So this would be a workout that replaces probably a running workout for an athlete who's not able to do a full running workout. But it's giving that athlete the same stimulus they'd get from running 2 to 3 times 10 minutes at threshold pace, but without the impact stress of landing hard on the ground. The athlete follows the workout on screen. Zwift adjusts resistance on the trainer automatically. They hit the prescribed power target and cadence target, and I know they're getting the right stimulus. And another way I can confirm that is if they wear a heart rate monitor, that's going to show up on the screen as well. And I'll be able to look at that data to ensure that their FTP is actually close to where they need to be with their heart rate range. So how do I program without using FTP? What if the athlete doesn't have Zwift? If you don't have Zwift or a power meter, I can program 2 basic ways. I can program based off of heart rate, or I can program based off of effort. So heart rate is my second option. The same heart rate zones that I use for running can typically apply to cross training. In general, easy is going to be 60 to 70% of your heart rate max. Tempo is going to be maybe 70 to 80% of heart rate max. Threshold is going to be 80 to 85% of heart rate max. And VO2 max is going to be 85 to 95%, maybe even a little bit higher than that. So with this, it's important to know for your athlete, what's their heart rate max, relatively speaking. We don't have to have things 100% dialed in, but we do kind of want to know a range. Is their heart rate max 190? Is it 200? Is it 210? That's going to dictate where these percentages fall when you're programming their workout. So an example of a heart rate based workout might be 10-minute warm-up, keeping your heart rate below 70% of your heart rate max, then 3 times 10 minutes at 80 to 85% max heart rate. This is going to put them in that same threshold zone, or relatively close to it, with 2 minutes easy recovery, followed by 10 minutes of cool down, again below their 70% heart rate max. So it's essentially the exact same workout, that I did for FTP. I'm just changing how we're measuring the intensity. Now we're just using heart rate. The athlete needs to monitor their heart rate during the session and adjust their effort to stay in the prescribed zone. Heart rate isn't quite as precise as power. It tends to lag a little bit behind effort changes, and it can be affected by heat, hydration, sleep, and stress. But it's a solid second option when you don't have access to power data. One unique thing about heart rate and cross-training on a bike, whether it's a stationary bike or you're biking outside, is that heart rate max tends to be lower, and therefore your zones are going to be lower if you're looking at heart rate max ranges on a bike. Because you're not weight bearing, there's going to be less global cardiovascular stress, and it's going to be a little more targeted to the lower body. So if your threshold heart rate when you run is, let's say, 180 or 175, on the bike, it could be 10, 15, or even 20 beats lower than that. So that's an important thing to note. This is where having multiple ways of confirming whether you're in the right zone or not can be really, really useful. And this is where effort comes into play. So if I can't use heart rate and I can't use FTP, I go strictly based off effort. But even when I'm using FTP, I still want to confirm it using heart rate and effort. But for the sake of this video, let's see how things look if we're just looking at effort. On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 to 3 being very easy and you could sustain essentially all day. 4 to 5 would be easy aerobic or conversational. 6 would be tempo effort or comfortably hard. 7 would be threshold effort, hard but still controlled. 8 would be into VO2 max effort, which is starting to get hard or very hard. And then 9 to 10 is going to be all out, which you can't sustain very long. So here's how I would program that exact same workout if all I have available to me is prescribing based off of effort. 10-minute warm-up at a 3 to 4 out of 10. Then 3 times 10 minutes at a 7 out of 10 effort or threshold effort with 2 minutes at a 3 to 4 out of 10. Then their cool down is going to be back to 10 minutes at a 3 to 4 out of 10 effort. This is the least precise method, but it still works as long as you're coaching the athlete to understand and pay attention to their effort level so that they can learn to calibrate the effort. Over time, they're going to get better and better at hitting the right intensity without a ton of external feedback. The key is teaching them what effort level should feel like. So make sure 3 to 4 out of 10, you could hold a full conversation. A 6 out of 10, you could speak in sentences but not paragraphs. 7 out of 10, you can speak a few words, but the conversation is difficult. 8 out of 10, you can barely speak and you're focused on breathing. So we've talked about how to program intensity, either FTP or heart rate or effort, or using all of them. Now let's talk about what activities actually work for cross-training. Since the primary tool that I'm using is FTP and Zwift, indoor cycling is my primary tool. It's low impact, it's easy to control the intensity, and it's the most similar to running in terms of aerobic demand. Indoor cycling on Zwift or a stationary bike allows precise control of intensity and removes variables like traffic, weather, and terrain. Outdoor cycling works too, but it's harder to hit exact targets because of hills, wind, stops for traffic, etc. And outdoor cycling has its own risks and dangers. Most of my athletes who aren't triathletes typically don't do a whole lot of outdoor cycling. Some of my athletes who are also triathletes, because of the nature and demands of the sport, have to do some cycling outside. Elliptical. The elliptical mimics running motion to some degree without the impact. It's great for athletes dealing with lower leg injuries like shin splints, stress fractures, Achilles issues, knee pain, etc. And in general, my favorite elliptical for cross-training is an arc trainer. The downside to most ellipticals is that they don't provide power data. So you're limited to heart rate or effort-based programming, but it's still very, very useful and can be an effective tool in an athlete's arsenal to accumulate more training stress aerobically without impact stress. An Airdyne is one of my all-time favorite pieces of cardio equipment. I used it a ton when I was training for a half marathon, and I absolutely loved how much it kicked my butt. The only thing about an Airdyne is you're probably going to have a slower cadence because of the nature of how the bike works. Even though you're using upper body and lower body, in order for you to get cadence relatively close to what you probably should be running cadence-wise, you're going to exert way, way more effort than is going to be appropriate for the intensity of that session. If you're doing sprints, you can probably get up into the right cadence. However, if I'm trying to do an easy cross-training session on the Airdyne, my cadence is going to be very, very low relative to what it would be on Zwift or another type of stationary bike. So, something to keep in mind. The advantages are you get to use your whole body, arms and legs. However, the cadence tends to be lower. And a lot of people end up mashing the pedals, and it becomes way more muscularly demanding than cardiovascularly demanding. So, just something you have to watch out for there. Another option is pool running or aqua jogging. This is completely non-impact. The athlete wears a flotation belt and runs in the deep end of the pool. Aqua jogging can be very, very useful for athletes who can't deal with any impact because it helps maintain running specific muscle activation patterns, which makes it very, very valuable for injured runners. But it can also be boring and hard for long periods of time. I typically recommend pool running for athletes with serious injuries who can't do any weight-bearing activity. Rowing is excellent for aerobic development, and it also builds upper body and core strength, but it's technique dependent. If an athlete doesn't know how to row properly, they won't get good training stimulus and then are at risk of hurting themselves, specifically their spine. I use rowing for athletes who have access to the equipment and have either proper coaching on technique or they're very familiar with proper technique, and I'm not worried about them getting excessively kyphotic or bent over as they pull the handle up towards their torso. Other really good options are swimming, if you know how to swim efficiently, stair climber, cross-country skiing if you have access to it. The key is finding something that allows sustained aerobic effort without excessive impact and that the athlete actually enjoys and will do consistently. If you're only going to do it once or twice here and there, it's probably not worth spending the time doing it. This is something that you want to have locked in to a set schedule, to a set routine that's going to be sustainable long term, that you can do consistently. Now let's talk about exactly how I integrate cross training into the training week. Remember from episode 3, we have 3 hard days and 4 easy days. Cross training can fit into both, but differently depending on training age and training volume. So for someone with low training volume or a lower training age, I typically have these athletes do 2 to 3 cross training sessions per week, about 30 minutes each, and almost all of them are easy intensity. And here's the key. I schedule these sessions on their hard workout days. Why? Because in general, I'm preparing them for double threshold days in the future. Remember, hard days I want hard and easy days I want easy. But in the future, if an athlete can tolerate a hard run session and a hard cross-training session, then I want to schedule those on the same day. Before they can do 2 hard sessions in a day, I want to make sure they can do 2 sessions in a day, 1 hard session and 1 easy session. For some athletes, before I even give them that, I'll give them 2 easy sessions in a day and slowly work their way up. But in general, most athletes can handle 1 hard running session and 1 easy cross-training session. So I typically start them there as preparation for down the road when I want to probably give them 2 sessions, 2 hard sessions in a day, a hard run session and a hard cross-training session. So it's preparation for the future. When you get to college or high-level running programs, it's extremely common to do double thresholds or 2 workouts in a day. You might do 5 by 1K at threshold in the morning, and then another 5 by 1K threshold in the evening, or 5 or 6 times 3 minutes in the evening, or vice versa. It can be swapped around. There's a whole bunch of ways to do it. So, since it's so common and it's becoming more and more popular, I want my athletes to be able to have some experience with this before they get to that level. This allows you to accumulate massive aerobic volume at threshold intensity without digging too deep into a recovery hole. But a freshman who's never done 2 workouts in one day isn't ready for double threshold sessions. So I start building that capacity early with cross training. An example weekly schedule for a low training volume athlete would be Monday, hard. We're doing hills or fartlek. That's going to be in the morning. In the afternoon or evening, they might do 30-minute easy bike. If they can handle doing that immediately after practice, if that's what fits their schedule best, then I'd have them do that then. Tuesday, they've got an easy run. Wednesday, they've got another hard session. Maybe we're at the track where we're focusing on tempo or threshold or critical velocity. Later on in the day, they do a 30-minute easy bike ride. Thursday, easy run. Friday, easy run. Saturday, we're back to a hard day. We've got maybe a race, maybe we're doing long threshold hills, maybe we're back at the track doing some race-specific work. After that, another 30-minute easy bike session. Sunday, easy long run. Notice, the cross-training sessions are on the hard days, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday. The athlete is learning to train twice in one day, but the second session is easy aerobic work. It's not yet another hard effort. The Saturday bike session serves 2 purposes. First, it helps account for the necessary training volume for the week. So even if an athlete is racing, I still want them to do a cross-training session, easy cross-training session, later that day. Because if they're at a meet and they're only running 1 or 2 events, they're going to need additional aerobic work to maintain consistent weekly volume. Secondly, this will prepare them for multiple races at one track meet in the future. In track season, an athlete might run a prelim and a final. Though rare for most distance athletes, when you get to a higher level, you may have rounds at certain meets. You may have multiple races that you're doing in one meet. You might be asked by your team to run a leg on the 4x8 and a 2 mile and a mile, or maybe a leg on the 4x4. There's a lot of different variations here. And the more work you can handle on meet day, the better you're going to be able to perform and the more points you're going to help your team score. Training an athlete's body to perform, recover, and perform again in the same day, I think, is critical preparation. Over time, maybe a sophomore or junior is going to be able to handle a bike session that used to be easy, and now we transition into more of a threshold session. But I want to build that foundation now when they're in 8th grade or their freshman year. High training volume or a high training age athlete who's doing a lot of run volume, I may have them do 2 to 5 cross training sessions per week, but the structure is going to be a little bit different. On their easy days, I may have them double with an easy cross training session. If they're doing 30 to 45 minutes of easy cross training on recovery days, this is going to be additional aerobic stimulus without added impact stress. The athlete runs their normal easy run, then later that day, or if they can handle it and it's not a negative stressor, maybe they do that immediately after their run, and then they can accumulate another 30 to 45 minutes easy. On a hard running day, like a Monday or a Wednesday, I might have them do a threshold cross training session either before or after their running workout. For example, in the morning, if they're going to have an afternoon run practice, then in the morning I'd have them do 2 to 3 times 10 minutes at threshold on the bike, similar to that workout that we programmed earlier in the video, where they're at 85 to 95% of FTP. In the afternoon, when they go to track practice, they're going to do their programmed tempo workout or threshold workout or critical velocity workout or whatever, aerobic power, whatever it is. If they're only training once per day, or they only have a block of time, then maybe those two things are going to be back to back. And so I might adjust down the total volume of work in each of those sessions. Maybe they do 2 times 10 minutes at threshold for the run workout, and they follow that up with 2 times 10 minutes at 85 to 95% of FTP for their Zwift workout. This allows the athlete to accumulate 40 to 60 minutes of threshold work in one day without accumulating 40 to 60 minutes of running impact at a higher intensity or a faster pace. So here's an example of a weekly schedule for a high training volume athlete. Monday, hard running session. Maybe they do hills. After that, 30 to 45 minute easy bike ride, and I typically program that later in the evening. Tuesday, an easy run in the morning, followed by a 30-minute easy bike in the evening. Wednesday, a hard threshold bike in the morning if they're going to have an afternoon practice, and then their hard practice in the afternoon. Maybe they're doing 3 times 10 minutes at threshold on the bike, and maybe they do 2 to 3 times 10 minutes of threshold in the evening. Thursday, an easy run in the morning, followed by an easy bike. Friday, I like to give Fridays as just one effort or just one session, either just run or just bike, and I like it easy because I want the body to know exactly what will be happening on Saturday, which is going to be a pretty big volume, hard effort day, whether that's a race or whether that's a hard workout in the morning and an additional cross-training session in the afternoon. Sunday, an easy long run or a long cross-training session. That ends up being 5 to 6 cross-training sessions in a week. If total running volume is 40 to 50 miles, then we're adding in an additional 3+ hours of aerobic work without running impact stress. And again, the Saturday session maintains weekly volume consistency and helps prepare athletes for the demands of track meets where they will probably have to compete in multiple events with limited recovery time between races. Here are some specific workout examples, some concrete examples of cross-training workouts that I program at different intensities. So, an easy recovery session that I'd give to just about any athlete. Somewhere between 30 and 45 minutes, depending on their training age. This is going to be at 60 to 70% of FTP, or 60 to 70% of heart rate max, or a 3 to 4 out of 10 effort. This is going to be on relatively flat terrain, no hard efforts. You're just moving, you're spinning, you're moving the blood through the body, you're delivering oxygenated blood to working muscle tissue, you're help clearing out exhaust from either the previous day's work or the work that was done earlier that day. The goal is to promote blood flow, add aerobic volume, and aid in repair and recovery. A tempo session for moderate or advanced athletes might be a 10-minute warm-up that's relatively easy, then 20 to 30 minutes at 75 to 85% of FTP, or 75 to 80% of heart rate max, or a 6 to 7 out of 10 effort, followed by 10-minute easy cool down. This would be a similar stimulus to marathon or half marathon running pace, or tempo to threshold effort, or tempo to threshold pace. A threshold specific session for advanced athletes or an athlete who might be injured but is still trying to maintain fitness would be 10-minute warm-up, and then 2 to 3 times 10 minutes at 85 to 95% of FTP, or 80 to 85% of heart rate max, or a 7 out of 10 effort, with 2 minutes easy spinning between intervals, and then a 10-minute cool down. Another option might be 10-minute warm-up, then 5 to 8 times 1,000 meters, or 5 to 8 times 3 minutes at 85 to 95% of FTP, or 80 to 85% of heart rate max, or a 7 out of 10 effort. Maybe 90 seconds rest between reps, and then a 10-minute cool down. There's a million ways to program it out. I often start with much shorter reps, but I try to accumulate the same amount of time. So can I accumulate 20 minutes worth of work in a session? I might start out with 1 minute on, 1 minute off. at the appropriate intensity, and then try to extend the length of the on or work rep, the hard effort rep, while maintaining the rest, trying to keep it the same time until I can work up to 10-minute sections or even longer if possible. These mirror the threshold running workouts we talked about in episode 2. It's essentially the same physiological stimulus, it's just a different modality. One thing that I might add in for the injured athlete that I may not do as often for a higher volume athlete who isn't injured are VO2 max specific sessions. So let's say I've got an athlete who can't run, but I need them to be ready to race when they are able to come back. Let's say it's possible for them to come back halfway through the season and they're going to be asked to do some racing, or they'll want to do some racing. We'll incorporate some VO2 max sessions. This might look like a 10-minute warm-up, then 5 to 8 or maybe even 5 to 10 times 2 minutes at 95 to 105% of FTP, or 85 to 95% of heart rate max, or 8 to 9 out of 10 effort. The recovery between these is probably going to be a little bit longer, maybe 2 to 3 minutes, and then a 10-minute cool down. This is really hard work, and I'm only going to prescribe this for athletes who can't run but need to maintain their top end fitness. It's not fun, and it's not the ideal way to do it, but for athletes who maybe it's their senior year or their junior year and they really need to get some times on the board, this would be a good way to ensure that when they do come back, it's going to be less of an on-ramp back to how racing feels and how really hard efforts feel. Just like with running volume, you need to progress cross-training volume gradually. But the progression is a little different. You're not constantly building. You increase when you move to a new season. Then you stay consistent. So typically, I increase total training session time by 5 to 10 minutes at the start of the next season. For example, an athlete doing 30-minute cross-training sessions during the summer and fall for cross-country might shift up to 35 to 40-minute sessions during winter training and spring track. So you do 30-minute sessions all summer, all fall. When cross-country ends, you take your break. When you start training back up, maybe you work those 30-minute sessions up to 35 or 40-minute sessions for all of winter and then all of spring track. After spring track, you take your break, and then you're going to bump up again another 5 or 10 minutes for the following summer and cross-country season. So why the increase? Because your total training capacity has grown. Your athletes can now handle more aerobic volume, and often as we move into track season and workouts become more specific and intense, adding that extra cross-training helps maintain total aerobic stimulus even when running high volume might be slightly less due to higher racing frequency. Here's an important principle. Find your running volume first, then increase cross-training volume after that. When progressing an athlete from freshman to sophomore year, my priority is finding their sustainable running volume for that year. Once that's established and they're handling it well, then I consider increasing cross-training duration and frequency. I don't recommend you try to increase both running and cross-training volume at the same time. That's asking for overtraining. Increase one, stabilize it, then consider increasing the other. For beginners starting cross-training, start with 2 sessions per week. Start at 20 to 30 minutes. Keep it easy. Do this for an entire season, summer through the fall or winter through the spring. The next season, you can add a 3rd session or extend it to 30, 40 minutes, but you're not constantly building week to week. Find that sustainable pattern, that sustainable and consistent rhythm, and hold that for a season and just work on maintaining it. So what do you do if you get injured and you can't run? Here's where cross-training becomes absolutely critical. When an athlete gets injured and running is completely removed from the table. The principle is simple. Replace the workout that they would have done running with a similar time, intensity, and structure for cross training. If an athlete was supposed to do a threshold running workout, 3 times 10 minutes at threshold with 2 minutes recovery, they would do that same workout on the bike or elliptical. Or maybe you would adjust it to accumulate the same amount of time, right? If it's 3 times 10 minutes and the goal is to accumulate 30 minutes, you could do 10 times 3 minutes on, or you could do 3 times 10 minutes on, or you could do 5 times 6 minutes on. There's a bunch of different ways to accumulate the same amount of time. And starting with small chunks and working your way up to the big chunks is going to allow the athlete to see that they're making progress even when they can't run. It's the same duration, it's the same intensity. You're just using FTP or heart rate or effort instead of pace. And you're going to have similar recovery intervals. If they're supposed to do a 45-minute easy run, then give them a 45-minute easy bike at the same effort. The goal is to maintain as much aerobic fitness as possible while the injury heals. For some athletes, they're going to be able to do even more cross-training volume because of the reduction in impact stress that they're not getting from running. Your recovery time between training sessions is also going to be much shorter if you're not dealing with an impact stress. If you're injured, I wouldn't stack them very, very close. I'd still keep it relatively similar to what their running structure might have been. But this is where you can adapt things individually for each athlete. It's going to be way easier for an athlete to do multiple threshold sessions back-to-back days if they're recovering fast enough for that to be an effective strategy. For most athletes, they're still going to want to keep the same rhythm and pattern, and I don't think that that's a bad idea. However, you can be a little bit more concentrated. Let's say you can be more dense with your training because recovery between bike sessions is probably a lot faster than recovery between run sessions. Here's a real world example from an athlete that I had in my program. This athlete had an Achilles tendon injury and couldn't run for 16 weeks. 16 weeks is a long time. And this was right at the beginning of our track season. Most coaches would assume that athlete's done for the year. They've lost too much fitness to consider being competitive, even if they can come back midway through the season or towards the end of the season. But we didn't treat it that way. He switched to Zwift sessions 6 to 7 days a week. I programmed his cross training exactly like his running would have been. Mondays was more of an effort or hill simulation type of program with higher resistance intervals. Tuesday was a longer, easy bike ride between 60 to 70% of his FTP. Wednesday was more like a track simulation workout where the reps were shorter but harder, working up to 85 to 95, sometimes even over 100% of his FTP. Thursday was an easy ride. Friday was an easy ride. Saturdays might be a long aerobic ride, 60 to 90 minutes, or we could even work in some races on Zwift so that he was still able to compete a little bit as long as it wasn't placing excessive stress on his. And Sunday was another long aerobic ride or an easy hour. He maintained this for 16 weeks. We weren't just keeping him occupied. I was maintaining and even building his aerobic engine. When he was cleared to return to running, we started very conservatively. And as his running volume increased, I started to slowly back off some of his cross-training volume. We did easy runs only for the first couple weeks, and then we gradually reintroduced running workouts. Within a few weeks back to running, he noticed that he could jump very seamlessly back into the pace group that he was training with before he got injured. And at his state meet, he was able to PR in the mile. And not just a small PR, it was a significant drop in time. How is this possible? Because he didn't lose any aerobic fitness during that 16 weeks. In fact, he increased his aerobic fitness. His cardiovascular system, his lactate clearance, his aerobic enzymes, all of that continued to develop through that cross training, even though he wasn't running. What we had to rebuild when he was able to return to running was the running specific neuromuscular patterns and his impact tolerance in his feet, ankles, knees, legs in general. But his aerobic engine was still there and actually stronger than before the injury. He finished top 3 at his state meet. An athlete who missed 16 weeks of running still competed at his highest level because we didn't let him sit on the couch. We kept training. So he not only PR'd at his state meet, but he finished the top 3. This is what strategic cross-training can do. It's not just staying active during an injury. It's maintaining and building fitness so that when the athlete returns to running, they're not starting from zero. Here's some critical points for injured athletes. Replace workouts with equivalent cross-training. Same duration, same intensity, same structure. Train 6 to 7 days per week if the athlete was running 6 to 7 days per week before they got injured. Program hard days and easy days, just like running training. Use FTP, heart rate, or effort to ensure that the intensity is appropriate and proper. When cleared to return, start with easy running only and rebuild gradually. Trust that the aerobic fitness is still there. It just needs to reconnect with running specific patterns. What are some common mistakes with cross-training? Right. Let me tell you what I see a lot of coaches getting wrong. Mistake number 1 is they make all of their cross-training hard. Just because an athlete can do a hard bike workout doesn't mean they should. If you're adding cross-training on top of running, most of it needs to be easy. Otherwise, you're just piling on hard work and your athletes won't recover. The same 3 hard days, 4 easy days principle applies to total training load. Running plus cross-training combined. Mistake number 2, you're using cross-training as punishment. You were late to practice, go do an extra 30 minutes on the bike. No, cross-training is a training tool, not a punishment. Just like running isn't a punishment. When you associate these types of things with punishment, athletes learn to hate them. Don't make your athlete do extra because they did something wrong. Mistake number 3, replacing running entirely with cross-training for healthy athletes. Cross-training is supplemental. It's not a replacement for running unless an athlete is injured or can't handle a certain amount of volume. Running builds running-specific adaptations, bone density, connective tissue strength, neuromuscular patterns that cross-training doesn't provide. Even if an athlete could get the same aerobic stimulus from biking, they still need to run to maximize their potential in running. Mistake number 4, no structure or progression. Just go bike for 30 minutes isn't a workout. It's random exercise. Program cross-training with the same intentionality you program running. Specific intensities, specific duration, specific goals. And mistake number 5, ignoring individual differences. Some athletes respond really well to cross-training. Others hate it and don't get much benefit. Pay attention to who thrives with cross-training and who doesn't, and make sure you individualize. So here's what I think you need to remember about cross-training. First, use it strategically. Cross-training serves 2 purposes: injury prevention and management, and additional aerobic stimulus without impact stress. 2, program it intentionally. Use FTP, heart rate, or effort to prescribe specific intensities. Don't just tell an athlete to go easy, give them a target. Next, integrate it into your weekly structure. Low training age athletes do easy cross training on hard days to prepare for future double threshold sessions. High training age athletes do easy doubles on easy days and threshold work on hard days. Progress gradually. Increase session duration by 5 to 10 minutes at the start of a new season. Find running volume first, then increase cross-training time. Replace your running workouts completely with an injured athlete. Match time, intensity, and structure. An athlete who's out for 4 weeks or 8 weeks or even 16 weeks can maintain or improve fitness with strategic cross-training. And remember, cross-training is a tool, not a replacement. It supplements running, maintains fitness during injury, and adds aerobic volume without impact. But it doesn't make you better at running by itself. Running makes you the best runner. Cross-training makes it possible to accumulate more total aerobic training than running alone would allow. We've now added this new pillar, how to maintain and build fitness when running volume is limited, to our complete aerobic first development training system. Cross-training isn't optional in my program. It's a strategic tool that allows athletes to accumulate more total aerobic training volume than their legs can handle from running alone. Young athletes can build the foundation for double threshold days, and older athletes can accumulate massive aerobic volume. Injured athletes can maintain fitness while they heal. If this series has been valuable, please subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram and X at coach_Kevin Kuhn. And if you're a coach or an athlete who has questions about cross training, please feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have a discussion with you. Thanks so much for watching. Now go add some strategic cross training into your program, and I'll see you on the next one.